This conference will now be recorded.
So let's start how to right. So before creating any lightning application, domain is mandatory. What do you mean by domain? This is your domain, right? So, but this is the domain uh, which is very common for every Salesforce to log into Salesforce, right? This domain is very common to log into Salesforce. But to run any lightning applications, we need to create a specific domain. You need to create a specific domain within your org. Lightning applications can run only into the custom domain that you create in your login.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so before you create any application, to run your lightning application, we need a domain. So domain must be registered for security reasons. So then we'll go here. And go for my domain. Domain is mandatory for to run any lightning application or components. And what is the navigation? In lightning, we have company settings, my domain. Right? Go here. And choose a domain here. Okay, and then go with register. And then you have to wait for a few minutes to uh, come to this stage for testing. Okay, now it's domain registration pending. Once registered, you will get an email, and then you can log in to test. Then you have to deploy to users. So domain you will choose. You have your now dedicated domain to login, not your generic login.salesforce.com. Okay, so later once you registered, once it is enabled, deploy to users, you can disable. You can just let users to log in only with this domain, and you can now stop login using login.salesforce.com. Okay, for your login that you can also enable once a domain is deployed. Okay, so domain is mandatory for you to run any lightning component or the application. For every lightning application will run only and particular domain. So domain will create a brand, and domain will keep more security, right? Because it's it's more unique, right? It's going to be unique. It's going to be unique domain across all the users. So I'm just waiting for the email. You can refresh and check also. Yeah, now it is ready to log in. So click login. So this is my domain. Suffix with your developer edition instance also suffixed. So once you have tested this, then you have to deploy to users. So first you register and then log in to check. Then once logged in, the next step is deploy to user. So now in authentication configuration section, you can yeah, the login part. Sorry, my domain settings. You can prevent login from login.salesforce.com for your login. Got me? So once you enable this, then you will see you have to log in with this domain alone. You cannot log in with login.salesforce.com if you enable this. Okay, but you don't want to enable. I just leave it. Got me? So this is the first step you have to do. Um, so you have to register the domain and check the availability and log in to test the connectivity, then deploy to user. You will follow this? You will follow this? Right? So then we'll see what is lightning component. We are going to see lightning component. So lightning component is nothing but a functional unit of your lightning application. It's a building. It's to build a single page. To build a single page, you need to build with the help of component only. The component lightning component framework is nothing but it's a UI framework. You need to build the component like this, like this, like this. Got me? So lightning component is nothing but a building blocks, a functional building blocks of your lightning application. So we'll see how to create a lightning component. So every page you are seeing basically consists of component. Every lightning page you are seeing consists of components. So this is one component, this is one component, right? So this is a functional unit of your Salesforce auth. So where I can uh, get the component details, how we are going to develop the component. The component we are going to develop with the help of predefined tags, lightning tags. Like lightning is basically open source framework based on Aura framework. So you're going to create a component with the help of this tag, Aura colon component. So what is Lightning? Lightning is basically a UI framework. It's an UI framework. You will create an application for both to run in both desktop as well as mobile. So any type of devices, the application will run. Application will be a responsive application by default, right? So what is component? Component is a functional unit. Functional unit, or you can say it's a self-contained and reusable unit. So it is every page you see in Lightning experience is basically a component, right? I'm saying 4 different components here in general. The top component, the query performance, assistant, today's task, and today's events, right? So we'll see, just start with how to create a one component, which can also be a one single page. A component can also be a one single page, and this is a functional unit for your Lightning application. So let's create a component. Go to developer console. Of course, any IDE you can use. Later we'll see how to use Visual Studio Code. Just going with developer console as of now. So go to File, a new Lightning component. So we have, isn't it? We have types of files that you can create, and go to Lightning component. I say first component, and ignore all of this. Ignore all this as of now. Click submit. And you will see the template is created, and one is just a description component. You can ignore that. Description component, you can ignore that. And this is where you are going to build your UI. This is where you are going to build your UI. So this is a component, and which has a tag Aura colon component. So Aura colon component is basically used to create a Lightning component. So Aura is the namespace, right? Aura is the namespace. And what is component? The component is a functional unit of. So this is where you are going to have your all the tags. It can also have an HTML, right? All together, you are going to create an interface like your Visualforce page. So this is a functional unit. How your Visualforce page behave as a functional unit for your classic application. Your component is going to behave as a functional unit for your Lightning application, Lightning page. So it can have HTML. It can have HTML and plus it can have a standard component, which means standard tags, and it can also have a custom component also, right? Like your Visualforce page, it can also have HTML, right? And it can have a standard tags, or I can say standard component. What do you mean by standard component? The components belongs to Apex namespace, right? Input text, page block, etc. Isn't it? And can also have a custom component. A custom component in Visualforce, you see like a uh, Apex colon component, right? Apex colon component. So using which you can create a custom component. So similarly, your aura colon component. Every component will start with the tag, open tag aura colon component slash aura colon component, like your apex colon page, or right close by apex colon page. Got me? So this your function unit can have HTML, standard tags, and custom component, right? And the extension of the file is going to be start CMP, right? And what exactly it contains? It is not just one element. Component is not just one element. It is a bundle. We call it as component bundle. The bundle has a component itself. The bundle has a controller part. The bundle has helper, style, documents, render, design, and SVG. Right? So there are 8 components we have. Got me? Able to follow this? So component is a kind of bundle. So we call them as component bundle. Bundle of elements. Right? What are the elements we have? I have a component itself and the controller part, and I have a helper class, and I have style component element, and just a documentation, and renderer, SVG. What else we have? Right? Component, controller, helper, style, documentation, render, design. Right. So there are 8 elements we have. So what is component? Component is where you have your all the UI related tags, HTML or standard or custom component you will have here, right? And what is the extension of this? A kind of XML file. Everything is going to be stored, managed as a metadata XML file. XML is like your HTML only, right? So it's XML file which will have all the necessary elements to create your interface. And what is controller? The controller is nothing but your JavaScript file. Okay, so component is a bundle. The bundle has XML element which is called component, and next to that we have a controller which is nothing but JavaScript file. Okay, and what is this? It is also called client side controller, right? We discussed about Lightning framework, right? Lightning framework has a um, 2 controller. One is a server controller, nothing but your Apex, server side controller, nothing but your Apex, and we have a client side controller as well. So here we have a component where you have your the tags to create your interface, and you will have a client side controller here. So any button click or any event occurs here, first that will go to your client side controller, then it will go to the server side controller. Got me? So that's how the communication happened, right? So we reduce the dependency on server side controller with the help of client side controller. So most of the non-database operations will perform in the client side controller. So what is this file? This is your JavaScript file. Got me? So that is what no, we use the controller part in the bundle. Able to follow this? So it's a client side controller. What about helper? Helper again is a JavaScript file. Helper again is a JavaScript file, and which is used to perform the common part of controller. There are some set of JavaScript code you may repeatedly, no, you may perform more than repeatedly multiple times. Then I just move those set of JavaScript code to this module. That's it. Okay, like to reduce the repeated set of code in the client side controller, I just move those set of code into a helper element. So it's a common set of JavaScript code. That's it. Okay, it's again a client-side controller only. But you cannot call helper directly from component. You follow this? So, right, so helper is also part of it. Helper is also part of it, but you cannot call directly, uh, helper directly you cannot call. You have to call the client-side controller, then you will call helper if required, right? If you have a common set of, you have some set of code that are required to be repeatedly perform some functional, some business logic, then I would like to move those set of code as a reusable code into a helper module. Got me able to follow this? Shall I proceed? Text are too small. I don't think so. Everyone is good, right? How about the screen size and text font and all? No, you mean it's too small or what? It's fine as usual, right? How did we set up in the last, in every session? It's fine, right? Okay, good. So style part, where you'll have all the CSS elements, CSS parameters. I can say CSS properties, isn't it? So in your Visual Force page, you will have a CSS right in the page itself, right, with a style tag, open style and close style. But here you'll have all the style elements, in the style element of your bundle. Okay, CSS. And documentation is just for the documentation. And renderer is basically something you need to perform when the page is re-rendered, when the page is rendered. Okay, so those elements, those part of code you will handle in your renderer element of your bundle. Let me see whether I can increase the font of enough. Is this fine? Is this fine to everyone? Okay then. So, and we have a design part, where we'll have a, the part like tokens and SVGs, where we have a logo, logos, you'll use it in SVG. But now this, the last two elements are not frequently used, not effectively we are going to use, because no, a lot of other upgrades happened which reduce the dependency on design and SVG part. But anyway, later we'll have a touch upon this element with the example. What is the important part of your bundle? What is the important element of your bundle? Component, controller, helper, style. The first four element of your bundle is more important. Pardon me, able to follow this? Right, so what is component? So I have a predefined notes for you. So let me explain that. Just wanted to reduce the time, spend time, type everything step by step. So I just explain the thing. Now we just, walk through the notes quickly. Got me? That way we can save some time, right? We'll spend more time on doing the example. Is this fine? The approach is fine, right? We'll spend time to see the examples. Instead, we spend just, writing the notes, isn't it? So, right. Okay, so R as a namespace and components a predefined element, and it's a functional unit. That is where you have all the necessary tags and button creation. Everything you'll have in the functional unit. It's a functional unit, right? And functional in the sense, right? It includes everything. It includes everything like a bundle. It's a functional unit, right? So you'll have controller, client side controller. You have a CSS element, we'll have a UI element all together, and a component is this XML file, and this is a JS file. Again, this is a JS file, and this is a CSS file. Got me? Okay, you'll see here extension is CMP, but it's a XML file, right? And we have attributes, right? So every components will have attribute, isn't it? Your Apex colon page has attribute, right? Your Apex colon input text as attribute. So attribute is just to add a properties for your tag. So what are the attributes we have? You will see in your Lightning Aura component, you will not find the auto suggested attributes will appear. So you have to find out your attribute, and you have to you will not rely on, you cannot select anything from auto suggested option. Autocomplete will not work here. Got me? So you have to go with your attributes, from the guide. So there is an attribute called access. So what is the use of this attribute? This denotes the scope of the component. Like your public, private, global. Access equal to public says like a component can be used within the namespace. It means within your org. Got me? Within your org. If it is a global, then component can be used inside and outside the namespace, right? So for example, I'm going to publish the component to the App Exchange. I'm going to publish a component to the App Exchange, right? And then you have to go with global. Access equal to global. You will follow this? And controller, you know what is controller, right? If you have a controller here, then I can give Apex class here, isn't it? So like your controller attribute in your Apex colon page. So controller is where you point any Apex class, right? I may call a method from component, Apex class method. Okay, so then you have to associate your component with that custom controller with the help of the tag attribute called controller attribute. And we have description just to have some comment. What is the purpose of the component? Okay, no functional use, just a description comment. And extend, you know what is extend, right? Extend is basically to extend another component functionality, right? Like how you use the extension. How you use the extension. Likewise, you can extend another component here. So when you extend another component, you will also provide a namespace colon, another component name. Okay, so this is just an explanation, to know the purpose of the attribute. But later we'll see the, the implementation, how to implement, in this type of scenario. And extensible, whether this component can be extended by another component. Say for example, this is a component I'm extending, right? So this component must have a attribute extensible equal to true. You got me? So only if the component has attribute extensible equal to true, the component can be extendable by another component. If the current component needs to be extended, then you have to go with extensible equal to true. You got me? You got me, all of you? You got me? And we have a template attribute. Able to follow, all of you? So you have template attribute. So this is, again, another concept called template. We'll look into it later. And we have implements, which is used to include an interface, Okay, so in Lightning we have an interface concept. If the Lightning has to be deployed in outside the Lightning Salesforce, or you can run your Lightning application in Visualforce classic application. In order to let your Lightning component run in Visualforce, we have to go with some interface. We have to implement some interface. In order to run this Lightning application outside the Salesforce R, you have to implement with the interface. So interface is going to give more functionality and scope for your component. Okay, so then we'll go for implements. Implements equal to predefined interface we have, that will refer here. Got me? So these are some of the important attributes in your component. Where I can get all those details, like in your Visualforce, in Classic, you have a component reference library, right? Likewise, where I can get the component reference library for my Lightning, to learn the Lightning. Okay, so we have next to your domain, just give a qualifier component reference slash sit.app. You got me what I'm trying to say here? So next to your domain, give the component reference slash sit.app and hit enter. So just load that URL. It will take you to the component library, Lightning component library. And do not worry about the URL, that will change to library overview, because it's a lengthy URL, right? So you just go with component reference slash sit.app. Then you will see here, I have a set of components for Lightning Web Component and Aura. So what you are looking into now? What you are looking into now? We are looking into Aura component, right? So Lightning framework is an open source framework built by Salesforce, right? The open source framework called Aura framework built by Salesforce, and you will see the necessary tags, standard tags available in the Aura framework here. Got me? So which tag we are looking into now? Aura tag. And what are you looking into? Component. And you will see, the documentation part of your component tag here. Got me? So component are the functional units of Aura. Got me? So which is a reusable section of your UI. Okay. And you'll see if you go to the specification, yeah, here as well, in documentation as well, you see the attributes here. What are the attributes we discussed now? So access indicates whether component can be used outside the namespace or inside the private to namespace. And controller, your server-side controller, right? To refer the server-side controller, nothing but your Apex class. Okay, and extends component. Which component you're going to extend? Whether the current component needs to be extended, then extensible equal to true must be given. Default, you cannot extend. Okay, so implements, basically to implement the interfaces. Okay, so we'll see what is the use of interface later. And template we have, is template we have, again, is template equal to true if the component is a template. Okay, the component can also behave as a template. I think this is very early to discuss this concept. We'll see later. You got me? So let's quickly create one component. So I'm not going to use this. Okay, this is my component. I just say I'm just going to use some HTML tag. HTML can be directly used here. You can use HTML tag directly, as you can use in your Visualforce page. I just give some heading, right? So this decides whether heading needs to be, what is the style of the heading, right? How it appears, how should appear. That decided by this tag, isn't it? Okay, so now how can I preview this component? How can I run this component? Got me? To preview the component, application is mandatory. Application is required. So I just create a component called first component. I just create a component called first component. The component cannot be executed, previewed alone. The component cannot be executed or previewed alone. It needs to be included into another element called application. It needs to be included in another container. Container application is a container, which is used to preview the component. The component alone cannot be previewed. I would like to preview, right? I have not implemented into any of the Lightning application yet. I have not implemented the component into any of the Lightning application yet. I would like to preview this component, how it works. Then how can you preview? You must be preview this with the help of a container called Lightning application. So I'm going to create a Lightning application, and I say first component app and submit. So app again will create a description element, and it's also created with the help of aura colon application, and it also has a bundle similar to the component. Similar to the component, it also has a bundle. Okay, so now how I'm going to include, how I'm going to preview this component. So if you see here, the application has a preview option here, right? Your component doesn't have a preview option. Okay, component is a functional unit. When you incorporate the component as part of your Lightning page, you don't need an application. But to preview the Lightning component, you need an application. Got me? So what are you going to do? I'm going to include this component. How am I going to include this component? So this is my custom component, right? This is not my standard component. This is my custom component, what we created. So custom component, without, if you do not have a namespace, for your org, then you have to go with the default namespace C. Got me? So normally, if you are going to publish your component to the App Exchange, then you have to create the namespace. You have to create namespace, manage package and unmanaged package. So you have to go to package manager, and you will have to create a namespace. Okay, you can ignore this. We are not going to create a namespace here. If you create a namespace, if you have a namespace in your org, then that namespace must be given here, right? Suppose I create a namespace called batch 117, then I have to go with like this. Got me? I have to go like this. But we do not have a namespace right now, because if you create namespace, then everywhere you have to suffix that namespace. Even if you query your database, you have to suffix every object with that namespace, right? Because we need to identify all the component inside your org with the namespace. But I do not want to go with the namespace as of now. I just go with the default namespace C. Got me? So C colon the component name. Either you close here or you can close here. Then you save this. Able to follow this, all of you? Able to follow this? Is it looking simple for you? We haven't discussed much, right? We just discussed about what is component, what are the bundle of elements we have in the component, and in order to preview the component, we go for application. Got me? So in order to preview the component, we go for application. We are not implemented the component as part of any Lightning page as of now, right? So when you implement, I don't need application. I can include the component as a page, into the page, any of the page, but we are not into that topic yet. So I'm just going to preview the component with the help of application. So I go here, Lightning app. Lightning app also is a kind of bundle. You'll have all the elements that you have seen in your component. The difference is instead of component, we have application here. Okay, then I'm going to preview this. Right? Can I preview this component without a domain? You cannot. The domain is mandatory to run your component. That's the reason we first created a domain first. Right? That's the reason we first created a domain. So domain is must to run any application or component. Got me? You will follow this. So now I can preview. So see the output here. Follow this. Why do you need our own namespace? Every component by default belongs to particular namespace, right? So how can you? It is a custom component we create, ma. It is a custom component. You know, like your. How did you refer your the component like your in Visualforce page? So every component has a namespace, right? If you create your own component, in the case of Visualforce page, we have an element called Visualforce component. Okay, so this is my custom component, right? So how did you include this component? I had to include this component like C colon custom component. So like a page, I have another component created, myself called custom component, like a page that belongs to Apex, right? So similarly, every component you create that's going to be belongs to a namespace called C. So this is your Visualforce classic concept. In your Lightning, every custom component you create that's going to belongs to a namespace called C. Okay, so namespace is mandatory. If you are going to publish your component outside your Salesforce or either in App Exchange, then you will go for your namespace, because the component will have a name conflict, right? Because multiple users will deploy the component in App Exchange, publish the component in App Exchange with maybe with the same name, right? So then in order to avoid the redundancy, to avoid duplication name conflict, you will go with your own namespace. So among the namespace, you can have a your own component, right? Like your, as I usually take an example, like I have a same person, with the name Ramu in two different batches. Then how to differentiate, right? How to differentiate, right? How do refer Ramu from batch 11 like this, isn't it? Got me? So names is mandatory to avoid to let system to identify which component it has to run, right? So namespace within the org is not mandatory, but when you publish outside, the namespace is mandatory. Then you will go for creating a namespace. Got me? Am I clear? Am I clear? We are not created. That is a default namespace provided by the system. Every component we create, that automatically goes to the system namespace called C. That's it. So any namespace you create, then you can choose your name. Once it is created, then you have to everywhere you have to point it. To avoid that, the additional effort. If you go for a select query, then every suppose I create the namespace called batch 11. Then what do you have to do? Select. You have to do like this, right? I do not want to do like this, to add more additional effort. I just avoid creating my namespace. But you should know what is namespace. That's what I given. Okay, namespace is mandatory. When you refer the component, take your component outside your Salesforce org. Got me? Right. So these are no, that's how we create a component. So let me create a. I would like to create a component like this. This is my application. I need to create a component with to display the name, phone. Okay, and I'm going to create another component which is going to have address details. So there are two components I'm going to create. So this is one component, and this is another component. I'm going to preview this component with the help of a container called application. Got me? So wherever I need this name, age, phone details, I can use this component anywhere in my Salesforce org. It's a kind of reusable unit, right? Reusable unit. Once I create it, I can use it in any places I want, isn't it? Okay, let's create a component. I say personal details and submit. One more component. And I would say so we're going to preview this. We need a lightning app. So we will submit, and then I say C colon student. It's okay. C colon. Right. And we can preview. Right. Able to follow this? Able to follow this? And now I just use two components. I can also nested a component, one component inside another component. I can nested. I can have one more component here. I can nest one component inside another component. Let me. So that can also be done. Suppose I have a component. Process. Okay, so I have this component. I like to nest it inside in another component. Say personal component. So this is one component, right? I can nest it here. Like this. Got me? So now if you preview this, so I got the fields over here. Follow this, all of you. Follow this. Any question here? Any question here? Okay, so I just repeat. So how do you preview this? What is component? Component is a functional unit, right? Component is a functional unit which is a bundle, has 8 elements. Component itself, it's an XML file, and controller, which you'll have a client side controller JavaScript code here, and helper is a common set of JavaScript code. You will have it in helper class, and CSS element over here. Okay, so these 4 are important part of your bundle. Got me? So once you created component, how do you preview the component, right? How to preview the component? So now I'm just learning the how the component works. Then I like to preview it every time I build and preview it. Then we go for application. So application is necessary to preview the component. Got me? So if you are going to implement the component, finally the component would be created for to implement any of your page, right? It can be a home page. It can be home page. What you're seeing is a home, component can be placed in a home page. You know what is home page, right? Home page will have a quarterly performance a chart, and I'm talking about an application. Yeah, so you'll see, right? A component can be placed in home page or record page or application page. Got me? So there are 3 places you can place your component. When you place the component any of these pages, we'll see later how to implement as part of this page. Home page or record page. Record page, that's nothing but a particular record, right? If you go to a particular record, and you will see that is your record page. So I can place the component into any of the record page I want, and instead, before I implementing any of these pages, I like to preview the component. Then you'll go for application, right? Then you go for application. So you just create an application, and that will create include a Oracle and application tag. So inside which I can include my component that you like to preview, and you'll see a preview button here. Got me? Able to follow this? That's what you asked, right? Okay, you can preview it. And one component can be nested inside another component. One component can nested inside another component. Like here, I have a component called the student course. I can nested. So that hierarchy nested inside one another, you can do it. Okay, and how do you communicate between the 2 components? Suppose I like to pass value. That's again a different concept called event handling that we'll see later. There are different ways you can communicate. How the parent can communicate to child, and child communicate to parent. How you can propagate that event. Okay, so that going to be that's what we're going to learn in this lightning course. Okay, right. So now, and again, the namespace. By default, every custom component you create, it's going to be part of your namespace, default namespace called C. If you create your own namespace, under package topic link, then you will see you have to provide that namespace. But we are not going to create namespace now. We'll go with the default namespace to avoid adding more effort to build the example. I just go with the default namespace C:. Okay, but namespace is mandatory in order to publish your component to App Exchange. In order to publish your component for your partners, outside your Salesforce org, the namespace might be mandatory. I mean, people are clear with this, all of you. Any question over here? Any question over here? Any question? How do you find the things today? Are you able to follow this, all of you? Right? So how do you call lightning bundle? So, okay, the question like what is lightning component development? What is a lightning component? It is a functional unit, right? It's a functional unit. You'll have it's a functional unit, and it is a bundle, right? You'll say it's a bundle. It's very repeated questions in interview. Okay, what is a bundle contains? The bundle contains the component XML element, and controller JS part, client-side controller, and common JS code will have in helper, and all the CSS necessary to style this element will have in this style element. Okay, and we'll have a documentation, renderer, design, SVG. Right? We'll see much more detail later. Okay, not at this point, because the first 4 elements are more important to do your lightning development. Okay, and application, what is application? Why do you need that? Application is a container for component. Application is a container for component to preview the component. Got me? And one component can nested inside another component. And what are the attributes we have in the component? We have a controller attribute, we have extensible, extends, right? So, and access, the component can be referred outside the Salesforce namespace or inside the namespace. Got me? And these are the details we have seen. And domain is mandatory in order to develop any lightning application. In order to implement any lightning application, domain is mandatory. So we just create a domain. Okay, once you create a domain, then you can locate this, the component library also. How do you locate the component library? We'll go with the component reference next to your instance name /c.app. Okay, then you load this URL, it will take you to the component library automatically. Okay, so there you can find the documentation below your aura. Okay, aura we have this namespace, and more frequently used namespace is going to be lightning only. Lightning, and aura is basically used to just create the component and app, but most frequently used namespaces lightning. And there are some component we have that we'll see later, like iteration, if conditions and all, we'll see later. But lightning is a component, the namespace we are going to use more frequently. Suppose I like to include a button, then lightning : button, likewise. Okay, right. Let's continue tomorrow. I'll upload the notes for you in the chatter tab, after an hour time. Please give me a time. I will upload the notes in your chatter tab and share the credentials to whoever continued. I will share the credential to all of you. I hope everyone is continuing, right? So I'll share the notes and credential to everyone in the chatter tab. Okay, so give me a time. I need to catch up other activity. Any question before I wind up? Application is mostly used to preview the component, and in other purpose application you will create to use it in Visualforce page, that we'll see later. Okay, there are some other purpose, but more frequently the more important purpose we use to preview the component when you learn component development. Okay, got me? It's going to happen through Google Drive. It's going to happen through Google Drive, isn't it? So I will share each one of you ID in the Google Drive so that you will access the videos from my Google Drive. Okay, even I just thought to load the videos in the YouTube channel, so that not every videos, but at least for purpose of marketing, I would like to upload a few of the videos, so that I request you to go through in the channel so that I get some views and some sort of marketing, right? So I just like to go with that later, not now. Maybe I'll decide and do it. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do it daily, but today just give me a time. I need to catch up other activity. Okay, see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye. And whoever